So good morning, everybody. I don't know what your Christmas was like, how many office parties you have attended, what festive meals you have participated in, what amazing gifts have you given to others. I do not even know how you feel about Christmas. Some of you, and there might be a few of those in our midst, feel a little self-righteous indignation that the remnant church has anything to do with this pagan festival. And if it were up to you, you would take the Christmas tree out from there and chop it outside like Gideon did with Baal's pole. And you feel quite smug and holier than the crowd who are still not getting it. And then there are those for whom Christmas means a lot of extra work. At work, at home, at church, and you will be glad that it's now over. And then the rest of us oscillate between indulgence and grudging either the Boxing Day match loss of Watford, Man City, or Southampton. And if you mourn the loss of Burnley or Huddersfield, I don't know what to suggest to you. Probably you need to find another team to support. And for those who are beyond the Premiership League football, you are most probably bemoaning the commercialization of Christmas, the mad rush to buy gifts, the annual spending frenzy. Each year in certain Christian circles there is this cry, "Let's put Christ back into Christmas." And although I am sympathetic with the genuine cause and concern, I think it's misplaced. The commercialization of Christmas does not actually displace Christ. He's not excluded. He's there in the scenes that we know and love, in some departmental stores or shopping malls or other temples. Christ's child lies blissfully in a decorative gilt-edged manger, while the background music reminds us that he sleeps in heavenly peace. The greatest problem of commercialization of Christmas is not that Christ is not there. It's that it does not match the biblical portrayal. According to Matthew, Jesus did not sleep in heavenly peace. On the contrary, he slept, if he slept at all, in the midst of great danger and death. It's difficult to sleep when your life is threatened, when you are fleeing for your life. It's difficult to sleep in a world where Herod is around. The greatest problem of contemporary Christmas, with all its sentimentalization, sanitation, oversimplification, or concentration on baby Jesus, means that you end up with Christ that is completely removed from the world of Herod, the real world of pain and brokenness. And such Christ is then completely irrelevant. A baby sleeping in heavenly peace is irrelevant to anyone who is grieving a loss of loved one, to anyone who has been spiritually, emotionally, or sexually abused, or to someone living in a war zone. A Christ like that is irrelevant and not helpful to someone who is unemployed or underemployed, to those who are struggling with doubt, disappointment, or shame, and certainly irrelevant to anyone homeless, sleeping in downtown. Those tear-inducing manger scenes and soothing Christmas carols just don't cut it in the world that's full of reality of Herod. So let's get back to the words that Emily read for us a little while ago in Matthew 2 and see how Matthew portrays this story. Matthew 2, from verse 13. When the Magi had gone, the angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream. "Get up," he said, "take the child and his mother and escape to Egypt. Stay there until I tell you, for Herod is going to search for the child in order to kill him." So he got up, took the child and his mother during the night, and left for Egypt, where he stayed until the death of Herod. Verse 16, when Herod realized that he had been outwitted by the Magi, he was furious and gave orders to kill all the boys in Bethlehem and its vicinity who were 2 years old and under, in accordance with the time he had learned from the Magi. You see, in the folklore rendition of Christmas, as the shepherds were leaving, they met Magi at the door the very night that Jesus was born. But this is just not biblical. The shepherds visited Jesus on the night he was born at the direct command of the angels. But Magi only then started their journey. And if the star was a distant company of singing angels, as the Desire of Ages, page 60, tells us, it took them some time to arrive in Bethlehem. Depending on the place of origin where they started, and the Bible doesn't tell us where they came from, Bethlehem was minimum 500 miles and maybe, possibly, 1,200 miles away. We read in Luke that 40 days after Jesus was born, his parents took him to Jerusalem to present him to the temple, in the temple. And that's where they met Simeon and Anna. After the visit of Magi, they would not go to Jerusalem. They would not risk their life. Actually, we read that the very night that the angel warned Joseph, they escaped to Egypt. So the visit of Magi takes place more than 40 days after Jesus was born. Actually, if you look at verse 11, Matthew 2:11, speaking about the Magi, it says, "On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary. They bowed down and worshipped him." So Jesus is in the house, not in the manger or barn anymore, in spite of what you have been singing in the previous hymn twice. It's just not biblical. He's in the house. Another important thing not to miss is that Matthew shows by pointing to the prophet Micah that Messiah was born in a small town, Bethlehem, that no meaningful Bethlehem, no place in the province of Judah, because God bypassed Jerusalem, the great city where Herod ruled. And God bypassed Herod, the king of Jews, and chose to work through a poor peasant couple and a child that will later suffer from questionable birth status. What a surprise. And who comes to worship the child? Not Herod or any other Jewish religious leaders, but pagan astrologers. This baby lying in Bethlehem is perceived rightly by these wise pagans to be the true king of the Jews. And his birth has such cosmic significance that it's signified by the star in heavens. This vulnerable baby is perceived to be such a threat for powerful Herod because he feels that the baby is a threat to his pretension of power. Now, if you know anything about Herod, you realize why it is so. He has been married to 10, possibly 12 wives. He had 43 children, or around that number. Most of his marriages were politically motivated. They were all about obtaining power or holding on to power, because he knew how the world operated. The only wife he ever loved, according to Josephus Flavius, Jewish historian, was one of his wives named Miriam. And he was kind of obsessive about her. She bore him 5 children in 7 years. But he did not trust her loyalty, and so had his beloved wife Miriam, the only woman who ever loved him, and he loved, executed, just to make sure he could hold on to his power and wealth. He was willing to execute his beloved wife. He did not trust her mom, and so he had his mother-in-law executed as well. Probably some of you can sympathize with that, but it's Christmas, so. But not only that, he had his 2 brothers-in-law executed. And then he thought that his 2 sons born to him by Miriam were getting a little ambitious. So he had both of his sons smothered to death. His barber stuck up for those 2 sons, so he had his barber executed because he thought that he might be too dangerous. And when he was on his deathbed, this Herod the Great had another son that was under guard because he thought that he might be a little bit too ambitious. When Herod was about 5 days away from his dying, his son at that point thought that the father has already died, and so he tried to bribe the guard to let him out of his confinement. The guard immediately went to Herod and told him. So Herod had his 3rd son executed just 5 days before he died. Now, when Herod was dying, he knew that people of Israel would have a party when he died. Nobody's going to be sad that the king died. And so he took 70 of the most elite citizens of Israel and get them imprisoned and placed in hippodrome in Jericho, and gave his sister Salome instructions that on the day he dies, all 70 of these citizens must be put to death, because that would make sure there was grieving and tears in Israel on the day when he died. This was the fabulously wealthy, famous Herod the Great, the king of the Jews. He knew how the world worked. He watched the rulers come and the rulers go. He watched the rulers rise. He watched the rulers fall. He knew who were the players and who were not the players. He knew who counted and who did not count. He knew, just like we know in our world. He knew how to outmaneuver, outweight, outsmart, outfox, out-intimidate everybody else. That's why he was Herod the Great. And so it's not surprising that Herod the Great feels threatened when somebody is born the King of the Jews. And as it says in verse 3, when King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. Because if Herod is not happy, nobody is going to be happy. And that's why he's not going to stop from killing the babies of Bethlehem. By the way, how many babies have been killed in Bethlehem? Anybody thinks 100? 200? 500? 2,000? If historians are right, then Bethlehem of the day was about 300 people, maximum 1,000. So we are talking about 12 to 20 children. So it's not a national genocide, but try to tell those mothers who are weeping. Has anyone beside me wondered why, if God could send an angel to warn Joseph and Mary and tell them to flee, why didn't he send an angel to tell the other parents in Bethlehem? If Jesus safely escaped, why did the other children have to die? If God ever intervenes to deliver, why not when it touches our family, my loved ones? Have you ever wondered why God does what he does and doesn't do what he doesn't do? No angel warning the Bethlehem parents to run away. And it's their weeping there in verse 18 of Matthew 2 that brings to the surface the non-romantic face of Christmas. And so, although I can sympathize and relate to the desire to put Christ back into Christmas in order to counter the commercialization and distortion of the special reason, actually, I want to suggest to you humbly, what we need to do is to put Herod back into Christmas, to counter the sentimentalized glitz with which the season has been papered over. Because you see, Herod is part of Christmas. He's integral to Christmas because he places the birth of Jesus firmly in history. That's literally true on a historical level. We know that Jesus was born between 6 BC and 4 BC before Christ because Herod died in year 4 BC. Thus, Herod places the birth of Jesus firmly in history. But also Herod places Jesus in the harsh reality of history that you and I need to go through. You see, according to the Bible, Jesus did not come to this mystical, never-mind land, this storybook Christmas. He came into the world of Herod. The world that you and I know really well. In 2018, over 300 people died of Ebola in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And the World Health Organization considers this the most neglected crisis of 2018. They could not run away. On 22nd of December, a tsunami hit Sunda Strait in Indonesia, killing at least 429 people, injuring more than 1,460, and even till today, more than 150 are still missing. At least 23 people were killed and 14 injured in Dangdekuri district in Nepal when a bus carrying students and their teachers returning from a botanical trip ran off the road and plunged 700 meters into a ravine. At least 13 miners, 11 Poles and 2 Czechs were killed and 11 more injured in a mine explosion in northern Bohemia, Moravia, and Silesia on the Polish border. Those 13 miners didn't make it to family Christmas. 5 people were killed and dozens injured when a train slammed into a bus carrying school students in Niš, Serbia, just before Christmas. Street battles and anti-government protesters and riot police in Sudan left 19 people dead, according to their statistics, while Amnesty International puts the death toll at 37. The Afghan Health Ministry says that the attack by a suicide bomber and 3 gunmen at the government building in Kabul killed at least 43 people. On the streets of Longyan in China, a man stabbed a local government official and a police officer, then hijacked a bus and drove into pedestrians, killing 8 people and wounding 22 others. On Thursday, 2 UK women from London, one 36 and the other 33 years old, and their one 10-month-old girl died while their Toyota Land Cruiser fell off the bridge in Iceland, at least 6 meters or 20 feet into the rocky river bank in southern Iceland. And yesterday, an explosion caused by a roadside bomb hit a tourist bus in Cairo, Egypt, near the pyramid complex. At least 2 Vietnamese tourists and an Egyptian tour guide died, and 11 others were injured. That's the world that you and I live in, that we know. Let's never forget that God showed His unfathomable love upon us 2,000 years ago at Christmas because He cared so much about our wounds, about the suffering in this world, that He personally entered the fray, this bloodbath we call history, so that He can redeem us and history from the bloodbath. But to see that, you must put Matthew 2 in connection with Jeremiah 31, just as Matthew does. In Jeremiah 31, though Israel is weeping and mourning, the prophet reminds them that the rescue is on the way. And Matthew is going to take this story and tell us that Jesus is going to bring deliverance even when things seem bleak and hopeless. Yes, Jesus was rescued from Herod this time, but He is not going to escape either. 33 years later, He will be crucified under Pontius Pilate and another Herod, because God actually did not spare His Son. In Bethlehem, He had a narrow escape, but on Golgotha, He died so that the rest of us might escape. No angel came that Friday, Good Friday, to Mary. For Mary or Jesus it was not a Good Friday. God seemed silent. He seemed to turn His back towards Jesus and Mary. Because at the end, Jesus was the only one who was not delivered from evil. And that's what can comfort Rachel, you, me, us. If you read that verse in Jeremiah 31 that Matthew quotes, you will see that it's actually the only said note in otherwise hope-filled sermon. A voice is heard in Ramah, mourning and great weeping. Rachel is weeping for her children and refusing to be comforted because her children are no more. But Jeremiah says that God hears Rachel. God cares about her grief. And God intends to do something about that grief. And that's why He brings the tidings of comfort and joy. God will come to rescue his people. Restrain your voice from weeping and your eyes from tears. That's what Jeremiah says next. Notice, not a shallow, don't worry, everything will turn out all right. There are things in this world that don't turn out all right. But he says, I, the sovereign one, will make things right. Why? Because as Carolyn told us, Christmas is not the end of the story. The sad situation of exile is not the end of the story of Israel. It may seem like that to them, to the mothers in Bethlehem, but the story continues. The sad situation of Bethlehem's babies is not the end of the story. And Matthew tells us the time foretold by Jeremiah has come now. Remember, Matthew writes after Christ's death and resurrection. And that's why he writes in light of it. He knows not only the Christmas story, he also knows the Good Friday story and Easter story too. Matthew knows that in the baby of Bethlehem, God is actually working for the salvation of all the babies of Bethlehem. And not only those, but everyone born or killed ever since. Matthew tells us Jesus came to take the Herod out. And that's what Christmas is all about. The decisive blow that God dealt to evil, injustice, and suffering on the cross. It still continues, as it did in Bethlehem, when the baby lay vulnerable in manger, threatened by a bloodthirsty tyrant. Matthew can be honest about the dark side of Christmas, because for him, it's part of the story. But the dark side is not the whole story, not even the most important part of the story. Why? Because this Jesus one day will do away with all weeping and crying. One day he will take Herod out. But that will happen fully and finally when the day of the Lord comes. But the encouraging thing is, he does not wait until the end of history to comfort his people. He comes to us today and assures us, as he did those mothers in Bethlehem, that he loves us and that he cares, that we matter to him. As I said in the beginning, I don't know what kind of Christmas you had this year. If you had a joyful, serene, and wonderful Christmas, thank God for it. And don't feel bad about it. Enjoy it. Just remember, there are those around who had a terrible Christmas. Those who had their loved ones torn from them violently, ripped from them through accident, illness, or suicide. So instead of sending them an obligatory happy family photo or a standard newsletter listing all your accomplishments or the amazing vacation travels that you accomplished this year, try during the next coming days to enter into somebody else's loss, mourning, grief, sadness, or just pure anger. It will take more time than a rushed signature. It will take more mental energy than a plain card. But somebody will be blessed because you took care. You found the time. Because you found the true meaning of Christmas. Because just like the wise men of old, you and I can discern the cosmic significance of Christmas.
Your